My name is Juliet Mercer. I'm 32 years old, and the day my boyfriend left me bleeding in the ICU to go on a beach trip with his ex-girlfriend was the day I finally understood that some people do not love you. They love what your life feels like when they get to stand inside it. I work as a project manager for one of the biggest commercial construction firms in Chicago. I've been in the industry for 11 years. I started at 21 doing the ugly jobs nobody brags about, hauling rebar, logging delivery slips in the freezing dark, standing in mud before sunrise while men twice my age tested whether I belonged there. I earned every certification, every promotion, every inch of respect the hard way. By the time this happened, I was making $147,000 base, with bonuses that pushed me past $180,000 in a strong year. I'm not saying that to brag. I'm saying it because money becomes a character in this story long before I realized it was the only part of me my boyfriend truly respected. His name was Evan Parker. We'd been together for 2 years. We met at a friend's birthday party, one of those crowded apartment gatherings where the music is too loud, the wine is too warm, and everyone keeps pretending they're having a better time than they are. Evan was standing near the kitchen island, making fun of the playlist under his breath, and I laughed before I could stop myself. He turned, smiled, and for a second it felt easy. He was handsome in a polished, harmless way, tall enough to feel protective without trying too hard. Dark blonde hair that always looked deliberately messy, a smile that made women forgive him before he'd even done anything wrong. He worked in sales support for a medical supply company and made around $38,000 a year. I never cared about that. Not once. I had never needed a man to out-earn me. What I thought I needed was loyalty, respect, presence, someone who stayed. For the first 6 months, Evan gave a convincing performance of exactly that. He texted me good morning every day, brought me coffee to the office, remembered small things, my favorite takeout order, the scar on my wrist from when I slipped with a box cutter on a job site at 24, the way I liked the bedroom cold enough to sleep under heavy blankets. He listened in that soft, intent way that makes you feel chosen. I thought I had found one of the good ones. Then he moved in. That was month 8. The red flags didn't arrive like alarms. They came dressed as inconveniences. Little moments that were easy to excuse if you were already invested in the version of someone you wanted to believe in. He started complaining about my hours. Not directly at first, just sighs when I came home late. Quiet comments while I kicked off my boots near the door. You're always exhausted. You never really unplug. Do you even enjoy your life, Jules? It was never framed as criticism. It was concern. That's what made it slippery. He made my work sound like a flaw in my personality instead of the reason the lights were on. Then came the comparisons. Olivia's boyfriend used to surprise her with weekday lunches. My friend Nate takes his girlfriend away at least once a month. Other women don't make work their entire identity. That last one stayed with me longer than it should have, because I had built my identity from scratch. And because the woman he kept measuring me against was Olivia, his ex-girlfriend, a woman who somehow remained permanently adjacent to our relationship like a perfume that never left the room. Officially, they were just friends. Officially, she was fragile. Officially, I was supposed to be secure enough not to care. Then the money started bleeding out in ways I kept calling temporary. First, it was his car. He had been driving an old 2012 Civic that looked one pothole away from disintegrating. I understood needing something reliable. What I did not understand was how reliable became a fully loaded Mazda CX-5 priced at $34,000 out the door. He couldn't qualify for financing a loan. I co-signed. Then he struggled with the payments. Just until I get back on my feet, he said. It was $489 a month. He never got back on his feet. Then there was the apartment. My lease, my deposit, my name on every utility. He couldn't pass the credit check because of old collections and a maxed out store card he said he had forgotten about. So I told the landlord he would just be staying with me. Temporary, informal, easier that way. I covered the $2,400 monthly rent. I covered the $489 car note. I covered the insurance when his premium jumped. I covered groceries. I covered furniture. I even bought him a designer duffel bag for Christmas because he stood in front of one at Nordstrom with that wistful little half smile that made generosity feel romantic instead of stupid. It was a $1,200 Louis Vuitton duffel. At the time, it felt like love. Later, it would feel like evidence. I was building a life. He was building a lifestyle. But I did not see it clearly then because love has a way of disguising exploitation as intimacy. The more you give, the more you want your giving to mean something. You start defending your own bad decisions because admitting the truth would mean admitting you helped build the trap. My closest friend at work saw it before I did. Her name was Mara Delgado. Mara was my foreman, had been for 5 years, and she looked like the kind of woman who could stare down a crane malfunction and make it apologize. Broad shoulders, dark braid, steel-toe boots that sounded like authority. She spoke with brutal efficiency on site and surprising warmth off it. Her husband, Daniel, adored her. Everyone trusted her, including me. Mara never liked Evan. She'd come by the apartment once in a while with plans or paperwork, and she would watch him lying across my couch scrolling through his phone while I cooked dinner after a 12-hour shift. She watched him complain about being tired after spending all day indoors, while I still had dust in my hair and rebar grit on my jacket. She watched him stack shopping bags by the door and then tell me he was too mentally drained to help unload groceries. Once, after he made a face at the restaurant I picked for his birthday because it wasn't really his vibe, Mara waited until he went to the bathroom and muttered, "That man has champagne expectations on a vending machine contribution." I laughed and told her she was being harsh. She looked at me for a long second and said, "No, Juliet, you're being generous with someone who's gotten too comfortable receiving." I brushed it off. Because when you love someone, warnings sound like interference. It happened on March 14th, a Tuesday. We were 3 weeks out from finishing a 12-story mixed-use building downtown, a $47 million project I had been managing for 18 months. My project, my pride. We were ahead of schedule and under budget. The client loved me. My boss had already started hinting at a promotion. That morning, the air had that sharp, metallic cold. Chicago gets, before spring, fully commits. I was on the 8th floor doing a walkthrough with the structural engineer, clipboard in hand, hard hat low over my eyes, already mentally rewriting the next week's delivery schedule. Then I heard it, a rigging cable snapping above us. It made a sound I still remember better than some people's voices, a sharp, singing shriek of metal failure, the kind of sound that tells your body the danger has already arrived. I looked up. 4 tons of steel beam had broken loose from the crane and started swinging like a pendulum. There wasn't time to think. I shoved the engineer out of the way and took the hit myself. The beam slammed me against a concrete pillar with a force so violent it felt unreal. I heard my ribs crack before I understood they were mine. My left leg twisted in a direction no human leg should ever twist. I looked down once and saw bone where bone should not be visible. Then everything went dark. I woke up in the ICU at Northwestern Memorial. Tubes everywhere. A chest drain. Monitors glowing in the dimness. A cast running from my toes all the way to my hip. There was dried blood under one fingernail. My throat felt shredded from the breathing tube they had removed. Every inhale felt like barbed wire tightening around my chest. A doctor with tired eyes explained that I was lucky to be alive. 4 broken ribs. A shattered tibia. Internal bleeding. Severe spleen damage they were still monitoring. Lucky. That word has always fascinated me. How people use it when what they really mean is, you survived something you never should have had to survive. Evan showed up about 4 hours after I got out of surgery. I remember that part with awful clarity. He walked into my room wearing a light linen shirt, sunglasses perched in his hair, and the kind of easy summer clothes people pack for airports and resorts. Not hospitals, not intensive care. He smelled faintly like cologne and fresh laundry, and the contrast between him and the room made something in me go very still. I was lying there with tubes in my body. He looked like he was headed to brunch. He sat in the plastic chair beside my bed and scrolled through his phone for nearly 20 minutes before he really looked at me. I watched his face in pieces, mild concern, impatience, distraction, a flash of annoyance when one of the monitors beeped too long. When he finally spoke, his tone had that clipped edge I had heard before whenever my needs interfered with his plans. "If you're just going to sleep," he said, "I might as well be useful somewhere else." For a second, I thought the morphine had made me hear him wrong. I tried to sit up. The pain was immediate and blinding. My ribs on the left side screamed so hard my vision flashed white. I fell back against the bed, gasping, gripping the metal rail until my knuckles went cold. "Useful?" I rasped. My throat felt ruined, every word scraped on the way out. "I'm in the ICU, Evan. I have a tube in my chest. They haven't even decided if they're keeping my spleen." "And that's awful, babe. It is." He stood up, smoothed the front of his shirt, then said the sentence that split my life cleanly into before and after. "But Olivia's falling apart." I stared at him. He kept going, like this was reasonable. "You know how she gets when she's alone. She's been crying for 3 days since Tyler left her. She really needs this trip. We both already paid for it. A trip. The word floated through the room like something poisonous. You're going to Cabo, I said. It's not just a trip, Juliet. It's more like a reset, a mental health retreat. And the tickets were $3,000 each. They're non-refundable. I looked at him so long my chest began to ache in a deeper way than broken ribs could explain. Non-refundable, I repeated. He nodded, as if that settled the moral math. I let out a breath that shook on the way out. I make that in a week, I said. I pay the rent, I pay your car, I pay for half the things hanging in our closet, and you're standing over my hospital bed talking to me about $3,000 while I'm connected to a chest tube? His expression changed instantly. Not into guilt, into irritation. Don't make this about money. That's unfair. Unfair? This is about loyalty, he said. Olivia has always shown up for me. My body was heavy with painkillers, but rage has a way of cutting through medication. A steel beam pinned me against a concrete pillar, Evan. I'm not home with the flu. I almost died. I know. He threw his hands up. And I came here, didn't I? I've been here for hours. I brought your charger. I talked to the doctor. He said you're stable. Stable. Such a clean little word. Stable means not dead yet. Stable does not mean fine. Stable means I'm not crashing this second, I said. It does not mean my boyfriend leaves me here alone to go drink on a beach with his ex-girlfriend. His jaw tightened. He checked his phone. Probably Olivia texting from the rideshare downstairs. I'll be back in 5 days, he said. That's it. Less than a week. By then you'll probably be discharged, and we can just stay home, watch movies, relax. Your mother is only an hour away if you need something. I almost laughed, but laughing would have torn my chest apart. My mother hates you. She doesn't hate me. She thinks I'm misunderstood. No, I said quietly. She thinks you're selfish. He ignored that, picked up his bag, the expensive duffel I had bought him. He stepped closer and kissed my forehead. His lips felt dry, detached, like a gesture copied from somewhere else. Don't be dramatic, Jules, he said softly. You're strong. You'll be okay. Then he walked out. No hesitation. No backward glance. The door hissed shut, and the silence that followed felt heavier than the steel beam that had crushed me. I lay there in a hospital bed, 32 years old, responsible for million-dollar budgets and 100-person crews, a woman who had built structures meant to stand for generations. And in the span of one conversation, I understood that the man I loved had looked at my broken body, looked at a vacation, looked at his ex-girlfriend's feelings, looked at the money he might lose, and chosen everything except me. That was the moment the pain changed. It was no longer just the shattered leg, no longer the broken ribs, the bruised organs, the chest tube, the blood loss. It became something colder, cleaner. The realization that I was not his partner. I was his safety net, and he had just shown me exactly how easily he could step over me when something prettier was waiting on the other side. Hospitals at night have their own weather. The air stays too cold. The lights in the hallway never fully dim. Machines keep speaking in tiny mechanical sounds that make sleep feel like something happening to other people. Everything is monitored. Your pulse, your oxygen, your blood pressure, the rise and fall of pain. Nurses come and go in soft shoes and calm voices, and every 8 hours, someone new asks you to rate what hurts on a scale from 1 to 10. The first night after Evan left, I wanted to laugh every time they asked me that. Which pain? The ribs that felt like someone had laced barbed wire around my chest and pulled tight every time I inhaled? The shattered leg pulsing inside the cast like it had developed its own heartbeat? Or the quieter pain, the one that arrived after the room went silent, the realization that the man I had been building a future around had walked out of the ICU because his ex-girlfriend was sad and the beach trip was non-refundable? I couldn't move my left leg. Not really. The cast ran from my toes to my hip, heavy and immovable, like part of me had been sealed in concrete. My chest strain tugged every time I shifted. My throat still burned from the breathing tube. Every cough was agony. Every attempt to sit up made my ribs light up so violently, I saw stars at the edges of my vision. And helplessness is its own humiliation. That was the part I had not been prepared for. I had spent my adult life solving problems. I ran job sites where delays cost thousands of dollars an hour. I managed schedules, crews, contracts, inspections, personalities, and disasters. I was the person other people called when something went wrong. Now I needed help adjusting a blanket. I needed help reaching water. I needed help because even pressing the nurse call button sometimes required more energy than I had. Around midnight, I picked up my phone and stared at the thread with Evan. The last messages were so ordinary they felt obscene. Did you want Thai or sushi tonight? Can you grab oat milk on your way home? Miss you. I opened a new message. I'm in a lot of pain. Typed it. Deleted it. Then, why did you leave me? Typed that too. Read it for a long time. Deleted it. I was not going to beg for tenderness from someone who had already done the math and decided I was worth less than his inconvenience. That thought should have made me feel strong. Instead, it made me feel very, very alone. Sometime after 1 in the morning, I made the mistake people always make when they are already hurting. I opened Instagram. I knew I shouldn't. I knew nothing good waited for me there. But loneliness makes fools of even competent women. It whispers that maybe there is still evidence somewhere that the person who abandoned you feels guilty, that maybe they posted something vague and remorseful, that maybe they're thinking of you after all. Instead, I found Olivia's story. A boomerang of 2 fruity drinks clinking in front of an ocean so blue it looked artificial. Sunset behind them. Pink sky. Gold light. Laughter you could almost hear through the screen. Caption: Healing era starts now. Then another story. Airport mirror selfie. Another one on the resort balcony. Then one more. Olivia filming the pool while a man's hand reached into the frame holding a drink. I knew that hand. Not because of the hand itself. Because of the bracelet. A dark leather band with a silver clasp I had bought Evan last year in Santa Fe on our anniversary trip. I remembered the exact shop. Remembered the old man behind the counter telling me the clasp symbolized protection and commitment. I had smiled and bought it because I was still the kind of woman who mistook symbolism for substance. His wrist moved through the frame lazily, casually, like my body wasn't back in Chicago, held together by stitches, tubing, and pain medication. I stared at the screen until my vision blurred. Then I threw the phone onto the tray table harder than I meant to. It bounced, slid, and fell to the floor. The crack it made against the tile sounded small, but in that room, it might as well have been a gunshot. I froze, then instinctively tried to lean over. My ribs screamed. The chest drain pulled. My leg stayed useless and enormous. I dropped back against the pillow with a strangled sound and just stared at the phone lying face up on the floor, its screen lighting up every few seconds with notifications I could not reach. I have never felt more trapped than I did in those 20 minutes. Not under the steel beam. Not waking up in ICU. On that hospital bed, staring at a phone on the ground, knowing I had all the anger in the world and not enough physical strength to pick up a rectangle of glass. A tear slid into my hairline. Not soft crying. Not heartbreak in the cinematic sense. It was frustration so concentrated it became liquid. A nurse came in around 2. Her name tag said Brenda. She looked like the kind of woman who had spent 30 years seeing people at their worst and no longer had patience for performance. Late 50s maybe? Hair pinned back. Reading glasses hanging from a cord, calm hands, tired eyes that missed nothing. "You're awake," she said, checking the monitors. Heart rate's up. "I'm fine." She gave me a look over the top of the chart. That's never convincing in here. Then she noticed the phone on the floor. Without another word, she bent down, picked it up, and set it back within reach. The kindness of that almost undid me more than the abandonment had. "Thank you," I whispered. She adjusted my IV and glanced toward the chair by the window. "Your boyfriend didn't come back?" The empty chair seemed to swell in the room. I stared at the blanket. He had somewhere else to be. Brenda paused just long enough for me to know she understood what that sentence meant. Must have been important. I let out a breath through my nose. "Cabo." She stopped writing. Actually stopped. Then she slowly looked at me. "Cabo," she repeated. "With his ex-girlfriend," I said. Apparently she's going through a rough time. Brenda's mouth flattened into a line that said several things professionalism wouldn't let her say aloud. "Well," she said after a moment, "that is certainly a choice." I laughed once. It hurt immediately. She softened, just a little. "You got anybody else?" she asked. "Family? Friends?" My parents were gone. My mother had died when I was 26, my father 3 years later. I had an older sister in Seattle, but we were polite rather than close, connected more by history than by habit. Most of my life was work friends, work people. Men and women I trusted with deadlines and emergencies and site inspections. But who did I trust with helplessness? Who could I call at 2 in the morning and admit I couldn't even reach my own phone? I knew the answer before I said it. "Yeah," I said quietly. "I have a friend." I called Mara at 7 the next morning. She answered on the second ring. "Juliet." Her voice was rough with sleep and instantly alert underneath it. "I heard about the accident. Are you alive?" "Technically." That got a short exhale out of her. "What do you need?" No hesitation. No "why are you calling so early?" No performative concern. Straight to the point. My throat tightened. "I need a favor." "Name it." "I need some stuff from the apartment. Charger, laptop, clothes, maybe underwear that doesn't feel like hospital-issued humiliation." A beat of silence. Then, in that flat, dangerous tone she used, when she already knew the answer and hated it, "Where's Evan?" I didn't answer. "Juliet," she said again. "Where is he?" "In Cabo." The silence after that was different from hospital silence. Not empty, loaded. "With Olivia," I added, because apparently the trip was important for her mental health. Mara let out a low sound that was not a laugh. "I'm coming." "You're at work." "I said I'm coming." She hung up. She arrived less than 2 hours later carrying a duffel bag, my laptop case, and a paper sack from my favorite breakfast place, even though I couldn't eat half of it. She had also somehow found my charger, 2 hoodies, my glasses, dry shampoo, lip balm, and the soft gray blanket from my couch that smelled faintly like cedar and laundry soap. She set everything down with brisk efficiency, then looked at me for a long moment. There are people who try not to stare when you're injured. Mara was not one of them. She took in the cast, the bruising at my collarbone, the tubes, the way I had to angle myself to breathe without wincing. "He left you," she said. "It wasn't a question. He said the tickets were non-refundable." For 1 second, she simply blinked. Then she sat in the plastic chair and leaned back like she needed distance from her own temper. "My truck is non-refundable too," she said. "If I wreck it, I don't leave it in a ditch and head to Disney World." Despite everything, I almost smiled. "That's not the same and you know it." "No," she said. "It's worse, because my truck has never claimed to love me." The room went quiet. I looked out toward the narrow strip of sky visible through the window. "Maybe he just thinks I'm strong," I said. "Maybe he really believed I'd be okay." Mara leaned forward. "You are strong, but strong isn't the same as unworthy of care." Something in my face must have shifted because her voice lowered. "Juliet, you got crushed by 4 tons of steel. This is the part where the person who loves you shows up anyway. No excuses, no beach, no ex-girlfriend. Just shows up." I swallowed hard and looked away. She pretended not to notice. That was another thing I loved about Mara. She knew when to tell the truth and when to let you keep your pride. She stayed for an hour, updated me on the site, told me the engineer I had shoved out of the way was fine and had apparently tried to visit twice already, but felt too guilty to come in, told me the crew kept asking for updates, told me my boss looked like he hadn't slept, told me Daniel had already offered their guest room if I needed it later. Before she left, she stood by the bed and crossed her arms. "You want me to change the locks?" "Not yet." Her expression said exactly what she thought of that answer. "You are too nice." "I'm on morphine. It's possible I only seem nice." "You've always been too nice," she said. "You run million-dollar projects like a war general, but you let pretty men with sad eyes freeload in your apartment because they kiss your forehead and say you work too hard." That's harsh. It's accurate. After she left, the room felt less empty. Not less painful. Not less humiliating. But less empty. That matters more than people think. Mara came back the next day. And the day after that. Never too long because she had a site to run and a real life to manage, but long enough to make the days stop blurring together. Sometimes Daniel came too, bringing coffee for Mara and whatever random household item he thought a bedridden person might want. Once he brought extra-long charging cords, because hospitals never put outlets where humans can actually reach them. Another time he brought a tiny tabletop fan because he said the air in my room felt stale. It was oddly moving, the practical nature of their care. Nothing theatrical, no grand speeches. Just people noticing what would make a bad day slightly less bad and doing it without being asked twice. Sarah, Daniel's sister, who lived nearby and knew Mara through family dinners, came once with homemade soup and the exact kind of stern warmth certain women are born knowing how to wield. She stood at the foot of my bed, looked me over, and said, "When you're out of here, you are not going home alone." I blinked at her. That wasn't really a suggestion, was it? Not remotely. I liked her immediately. Meanwhile, Evan texted once a day. Not long messages. Not apologetic ones. Just breezy little updates so disconnected from reality they felt like satire. "Thinking of you. Hope the hospital food isn't too terrible. Service is weird here. We're going snorkeling later. Love you. Olivia says hi." That one made me stare at the screen until the letters blurred. Olivia says hi. As though I were a coworker recovering from dental surgery. As though they were not on a resort trip together while I relearned how to breathe without crying out. I replied the first day with one word. Okay. The second day, I didn't answer at all. By day 3, I just read the messages and set the phone down. Every silence felt like a small reclaiming. Every ignored text felt more honest than all the conversations we'd had in the final months of our relationship. On the 4th day, Dr. Evans came in with my chart and the careful neutrality doctors wear when they are about to say something unpleasant in a calm voice. "Good news and bad news," he said. Give me the bad news first. He gestured toward the x-rays on the monitor. Your ribs are healing well enough that we won't need surgical intervention. The spleen stabilized on its own, which is excellent, but the fracture in your leg is more complicated than we hoped. You're looking at least 8 weeks in the cast, then another 4 in a boot. Maybe more, depending on how physical therapy goes. I nodded slowly. Pain I could handle. Timelines I understood. Then he asked, "What's your home situation?" "My apartment's on the 3rd floor." He didn't even try to soften his expression. "That's a problem." "How much of a problem?" "A significant one. You can't safely manage stairs. Not right away. You also won't be able to drive, and you will need help the first week minimum. Possibly longer. Someone strong enough to support your weight. Someone available." Someone. The word sat between us. I thought of Evan automatically, then hated myself for doing it. Even if he had been there, he could barely carry groceries without sighing. He weighed maybe 135 and complained if his shoulder hurt after the gym. The idea of him helping me pivot to a toilet or brace down a flight of stairs was almost laughable. Worse, I no longer trusted him with the soft parts of me. That mattered more than physical strength. "I'll figure it out," I said. Dr. Evans gave me the look medical professionals give stubborn patients when they know independence is a coping mechanism. Figure it out before discharge. That night I texted Mara. "Doctor says I can't do stairs. I need somewhere to stay for a week or 2 after I get out." Her reply came back so fast it felt like she had been waiting for me to ask. "Guest room is yours. Daniel already said yes. Sarah is making something with cheese and judgment." I laughed. Actually laughed. Then pressed a hand to my ribs and hissed at the pain. But it was the first real laugh I'd managed since the accident. I read Mara's text 3 times. "Guest room is yours." Such a simple sentence. No hesitation. No calculation. No mention of inconvenience, cost, timing, or whether something else more fun had come up. That was when the truth settled in fully. Not all at once, but heavily enough that I couldn't look away from it anymore. The people who truly loved me were not the ones who said the prettiest things when life was easy. They were the ones already rearranging their homes, while I was still in a hospital bed trying to understand how the man I had loved could board a plane while I still had a tube in my chest. Evan came back from Cabo on a Tuesday, exactly 1 week after the accident. By then, my discharge papers were being prepared for the next morning. And somewhere beneath the pain, beneath the exhaustion, beneath the humiliation, something inside me had finally started hardening into clarity. Evan walked into my hospital room like nothing irreversible had happened. Like the past 7 days were just an inconvenient pause instead of a fracture line running straight through everything we had built. He looked good. That was the first thing I noticed, and I hated that I noticed it. His skin was tanned, the kind of warm glow that only comes from uninterrupted sunlight and zero responsibility. His hair was lighter at the ends. He smelled faintly of coconut lotion and something expensive from duty-free. There was a brightness to him that didn't belong in a room that still smelled like antiseptic and recovery. "Jules," he said, dropping his bag by the chair. "Hey." He moved toward me quickly, arms opening, like we were about to reunite at an airport instead of a hospital. I lifted a hand. "Careful. Ribs." He paused, awkward for half a second, then adjusted, settling for a light touch on my arm, like he was checking the temperature of something instead of reconnecting with someone. "God," he said, looking me over. "I missed you. It was awful being away while you were like this." I held his gaze. "Looked terrible on Instagram." The words landed flat between us. For a moment, his expression flickered, something sharp and defensive replacing the easy charm. "I was trying to make the best of a bad situation," he said. "Olivia needed—" "Is Olivia okay?" I cut in. "Did she survive the trauma of being single for a week?" His jaw tightened. "You don't have to be like that." "Like what?" "Hostile." I let out a slow breath, careful not to pull too hard against my ribs. "You left me in the ICU, Evan." "I was here for hours." "You were here for a visit." "I brought your things. I talked to your doctor." "And then you went to Mexico." His eyes flashed. "It wasn't just a vacation." "It was Cabo," I said. I saw the stories. The catamaran looked brutal. He crossed his arms, shifting his weight like he was preparing to win an argument instead of understand one. "You're being unfair." "Explain it to me then," I said quietly. "Help me understand how you got from my girlfriend is in critical condition to I'm going to sip cocktails on a beach with my ex." He exhaled sharply. "You're stable, Juliet. The doctor said so." There it was again. Stable. The word people use when they want permission to disengage. "I was bleeding internally," I said. "They weren't sure if they were going to remove my spleen." "And they didn't," he shot back. "Which is good. That's my point. You were going to be okay." My fingers curled slightly into the blanket. My leg is shattered. I can't walk. I can't go home. I needed someone here. And I came back, he said quickly. I'm here now. That's what matters. I'm ready to take care of you. Something inside me went very still. Now? I repeated. Yes, he said, stepping closer again, softening his tone like he was switching strategies. I'll drive you home tomorrow. I already picked up some candles, to get rid of the hospital smell. We can just lay low for a while. Movies, takeout, easy stuff. I'm not going home. He blinked. What? My apartment is on the 3rd floor. I can't do stairs. We'll figure it out. How? I asked. You going to carry me? He hesitated. Just a fraction. But I saw it. I mean, we can take it slow, he said. Or we could get a hotel for a few days. And who pays for the hotel, Evan? His expression shifted again. We have savings. No, I said calmly. I have savings. You have a tan. The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut. His face flushed. Why are you being so mean? He demanded. I came straight here from the airport. I didn't even go home first. You want a medal? I want you to stop acting like I abandoned you. I looked at him for a long moment. You did. That's not fair. It's accurate. He ran a hand through his hair, pacing once like he needed movement to stay in control. It was a mental health thing, he said again. Olivia was... Stop saying that, I snapped. My voice cracked, the force of it sending a spike of pain through my ribs, but I didn't care. It was not a mental health thing. It was a choice. You looked at me lying in this bed, you looked at that trip, and you picked the one that felt better for you. That's not how it was. Then how was it? He opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. I thought you'd understand, he said finally. You're always so strong. You handle everything. I didn't think you needed me hovering. The words landed like a quiet betrayal. Not because they were loud, because they were honest. You didn't think I needed you, I repeated. I thought you'd be fine. I wasn't fine, I said softly. I was alone. For a second, something flickered across his face. Guilt. Maybe. But it didn't stay. You're overreacting, he said instead. You're in pain. You're on medication. This isn't the right time to be making big decisions. I felt something settle inside me. Not anger. Not even hurt anymore. Clarity. I've never been clearer. He went still. What does that mean? I took a slow breath, ignoring the protest from my ribs. When I get discharged tomorrow, Mara is picking me up. I'm staying with her and Daniel for a while. He frowned. Why would you do that? Because they offered, I said, without hesitation, without conditions. I'm offering now. I shook my head. You're late. His expression hardened. So that's it? You're just punishing me? I'm not punishing you. Then what are you doing? I met his eyes. I'm done. The room went quiet. The steady beep of the monitor filled the space between us. He stared at me, like I had just spoken a language he didn't understand. Done, he repeated. We're over, Evan. For a second, he didn't react. Then the words seemed to land all at once. You're breaking up with me, he said. Now? Like this? Yes. You're serious? Yes. His laugh was short and sharp. You're doing this because of one trip? I'm doing this because of what that trip proved. It proved nothing. It proved everything, I said. It proved that when it mattered most, I was optional. That's not true. It is. You're twisting it. I'm finally seeing it. He stepped closer again, lowering his voice. Juliet, we've been together for 2 years. I know. That has to count for something. It does, I said. It counts as 2 years I'm not getting back. His face changed then. Not into heartbreak. Into something else. Panic. You can't just kick me out, he said quickly. I live with you. My name is on the lease. So? So you're not. He stared at me. That's not how this works. That's exactly how it works. You told the landlord you were just staying with me so they wouldn't run your credit. Remember? That was just paperwork. It's still paperwork. He ran both hands through his hair now, pacing again, faster this time. Where am I supposed to go? There it was. Not, I can't believe you're ending this. Not, I don't want to lose you. Where am I supposed to go? I felt something cold settle in my chest. Go to Olivia, I said. His head snapped up. She lives in a studio. Sounds like a problem. You're being heartless. I'm being done. He stopped pacing, looked at me, really looked this time, as if trying to find the version of me that would soften. Apologize. Take it back. But that version of me had been left behind somewhere between the ICU bed and the Instagram stories from Cabo. Juliet, he said, quieter now. Please, let's just talk about this when you're home, when you're feeling better. I am talking about it now. You don't mean this. I do. A long silence stretched between us. He waited. I didn't move. Finally, he exhaled, sharp and frustrated. You're going to regret this, he said. You're throwing away 2 years over one mistake. I looked at the ceiling for a moment, then back at him. I'm correcting a 2-year mistake. The words hung in the air. Final. He stood there for another few seconds, searching my face for doubt, for weakness, for anything he could use. He didn't find it. Eventually, he grabbed his bag. "You're making a huge mistake," he said again, but there was less conviction in it now. "Goodbye, Evan." He lingered at the door just long enough to make it clear he expected me to stop him, to say something, to reach for him. I didn't. He left. The door closed with a soft hiss, and for the first time since the accident, I took a breath that didn't feel like it belonged to pain. It still hurt. Everything hurt. But beneath that, there was something else. Space. Clean, quiet, terrifying space. The kind you get when something heavy is finally gone and you realize how much weight you had been carrying without noticing. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, listening to the steady rhythm of the monitor. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't wondering how to keep someone else. I was finally thinking about how to keep myself. The next 6 weeks were the hardest I had ever lived through. And the most honest. Mara picked me up from the hospital the morning after Evan left for the second time, this time for good. She didn't bring flowers or soft reassurances. She brought a truck with enough space to maneuver my leg, a pile of blankets, and the kind of quiet competence that made everything feel manageable even when it wasn't. Daniel was waiting when we pulled up to their house. He had already cleared a path from the driveway to the front door, moved furniture to make room for crutches, and installed a temporary rail along the hallway wall, just in case balance gets creative, as he put it. Their home wasn't large. 3 bedrooms, 1 floor, worn hardwood, a backyard that looked like it had hosted 100 barbecues and would host 100 more. It wasn't impressive. It was safe. That mattered more than anything. They set me up in the guest room. Fresh sheets, extra pillows, a small TV angled toward the bed, a chair positioned perfectly so I could swing my leg without twisting. A basket on the nightstand filled with things I hadn't even thought to ask for. Lip balm, tissues, a bottle of water, a phone charger with a cord long enough to reach anywhere. It felt intentional, like someone had actually thought about what I would need instead of what was convenient for them. The first week was humbling. There is no graceful way to relearn basic independence. Getting out of bed required strategy. Going to the bathroom required patience. Showering required coordination, assistance, and a level of vulnerability that stripped away whatever pride I had left clinging to the idea that I could handle everything on my own. Mara handled it like it was logistics. No pity, no fuss, just solutions. Sit here. Hold this. Don't argue with gravity. Daniel handled it with dry humor and quiet respect. "Congratulations," he told me once as he adjusted the chair in the shower. "You've officially upgraded to deluxe recovery mode. 5 stars. Would recommend." I laughed, then winced, then laughed again anyway. Sarah came by almost every other day. She took over the kitchen like a general stepping into a command center. Meals appeared on a schedule. Medication reminders were taped to the fridge. A chart, an actual chart, tracked my physical therapy exercises, pain levels, and progress. "You're worse than a project timeline," I told her once. "Good," she said. "Those get results." In the evenings, when the house quieted down, Mara and Daniel would sit with me in the living room. We watched whatever was on. Sports, old movies, random documentaries no one fully paid attention to. Sometimes we talked. Sometimes we didn't. That was the part I didn't expect. How healing it is to be around people who don't require you to perform. No need to be interesting. No need to be impressive. Just present. The dogs, 2 massive, over-enthusiastic creatures named Titan and Brick, decided I belonged to them within 48 hours. They stationed themselves near my door like furry security guards, occasionally checking in with concerned sniffs and dramatic sighs. It was ridiculous. It was perfect. Meanwhile, life outside that house kept moving. Work didn't forget me. It showed up differently. My boss called once a week, not to pressure, to check in, to tell me the site wasn't the same without me, to update me on progress like I was still part of it because I was. Disability coverage kicked in immediately. $4,800 a month while I recovered. Enough to breathe. Enough to not panic. More than that, my promotion still went through on paper. Senior project manager. A 15% raise waiting for me when I returned. I had spent years proving my value. For the first time, it felt like that value was being recognized, even when I couldn't actively produce. The crew sent a card. Every name signed. A small stack of cash tucked inside. I tried to refuse it when Mara handed it to me. "Take it," she said. "You saved someone's life." I hadn't thought about it like that. I had just reacted. But hearing it framed that way shifted something. Not pride. Perspective. Not everything I had done had been wasted on the wrong person. Some of it had mattered. A lot of it had mattered. Just not to Evan. Evan, on the other hand, did not disappear quietly. At first, it was texts. Longer now. More emotional. I made a mistake. I'm sorry. I miss you. Then longer. More desperate. You're overreacting. 2 years has to count for something. We can fix this. Then defensive. Everyone I talk to thinks you're being cold about this. That one made me laugh. Not because it was funny. Because it was predictable. I blocked his number on the third day at Mara's house. Blocked him on Instagram. Blocked him on everything. Clean break. No loose ends. No room for him to slip back in with apologies that sounded sincere but led nowhere new. He tried other ways. Unknown numbers. Emails. Even a message through a mutual acquaintance who barely knew me well enough to justify being involved. I ignored all of it. Silence became my boundary. And it held. About a month after the accident, Mara drove me back to the apartment. Not to stay. To close it out. She brought 2 guys from the crew with her. Big, solid, no-nonsense men who didn't ask questions and didn't need to. I was still on crutches. Still slow. Still careful. But I needed to see it. Needed to understand what I was leaving behind. The door opened, and the first thing that hit me was the smell. Stale. Heavy. Neglected. The place looked used. Not lived in. Used. Trash overflowing. Dishes left in the sink. Stains on the carpet that hadn't been there before. Something sticky near the kitchen counter. I stood there, leaning on my crutches, and felt nothing. No sadness. No nostalgia. Just a quiet confirmation that I had already made the right decision. He moved out, Mara said, stepping further inside. Technically, he had taken things. Of course he had. The TV. The coffee machine. Some of the better sheets. Small, petty extractions from a life he no longer had access to. Classy, one of the guys muttered. Let him have it, I said. It surprised even me how easily the words came out. Consider it severance. We packed what mattered. Clothes, work files, personal items, old photos. The things that held actual weight. Everything important fit in the back of Mara's truck. That told me everything I needed to know. I found a note on the kitchen counter. His handwriting. Messy, rushed. You're going to regret this. You threw everything away because you couldn't handle me having a life. I read it once, folded it, dropped it in the trash. Some things don't deserve preservation. That afternoon, I called the landlord. Told him I wouldn't be renewing the lease. He mentioned the damage. Asked if I wanted to fight for the deposit. I thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. Keep it, I said. I was done negotiating over things that didn't matter. 2 months later, I bought a house. Small. 1 floor. No stairs. That detail mattered more than square footage or location. I never wanted to feel trapped by something as simple as steps again. It had a yard. Trees. A garage. A porch that caught the sunset just right. It wasn't flashy. It was mine. I put everything in my name. Every bill. Every account. Every piece of it. Not out of fear. Out of clarity. I had learned what it meant to build something and let someone stand inside it without earning their place there. I would not make that mistake twice. Recovery was slow. Painful. Unforgiving. Physical therapy 3 times a week. A therapist named Lena who believed in progress over comfort. Pain means we're doing it right, she would say while I fought through exercises that made my muscles shake. Also, she added once, your glutes are asleep. We're waking them up. I hated her a little and trusted her completely. Week by week, things shifted. The cast came off. The boot replaced it. Then the crutches became 1 crutch. Then none. The limp stayed for a while. A reminder. A memory written into movement. By month 4, I was back at work. At first, desk duty. Then site visits. Then full days. Walking floors. Checking progress. Reclaiming space. The promotion became official. The salary increase hit. Responsibility expanded. Respect deepened. It felt earned. Not just professionally. Personally. I had rebuilt something. Not perfectly. Not easily. But honestly, and that made all the difference. There's a moment in recovery people don't talk about. It's not when the pain stops. It's when you realize you're no longer waiting for something to fix itself. That you already did the fixing. It just didn't look the way you thought it would. By the time 8 months had passed, my life didn't resemble what it used to be. It was quieter, cleaner, more deliberate. I was back at work full-time, overseeing multiple projects now. The promotion had settled into reality. More responsibility, more pressure, more money. $165,000 base with bonuses that could push me past $200,000 in a good year. But for the first time, the money didn't feel like something I needed to use to prove anything. It was just part of a life I had built. A life that no longer had leaks in it. The house had started to feel like mine. Not just legally, emotionally. I built a fence in this backyard with Mara and Daniel over 1 long weekend. Cedar panels, 6 feet high. We stained it ourselves, laughing through the parts that didn't line up perfectly. I added a small deck a month later. Nothing fancy, just enough space for a grill and a few chairs. Every Sunday, people came over. Mara, Daniel, Sarah, a couple of the crew. Food, cards, laughter that didn't feel forced. The kind of environment I used to think required a partner to create. Turns out it just required the right people. I heard about Evan the way people hear about distant weather, through secondhand updates that didn't carry any emotional weight anymore. It didn't take long for things to fall apart on his side. Olivia and Evan lasted less than 2 weeks living together after Cabo. Apparently, healing energy doesn't translate well into shared space when someone has habits that only work when someone else is paying for them. There was arguing, a broken lamp, security getting involved. He got kicked out. From there, he bounced to his sister's place, stayed in a basement, watched TV all day, didn't look for work, didn't contribute. That lasted about a month before her husband gave an ultimatum. Family or freeloading. She chose her husband. Evan was out again. The car, the one I had co-signed, was repossessed about 3 months after we split. Once I stopped covering the payments, he didn't even try to keep up. Didn't call. Didn't negotiate. Just ignored it until it was gone. I heard that story and felt nothing. Not satisfaction. Not anger. Just distance. That's how I knew I was truly over it. When someone's collapse stops feeling like justice and starts feeling like irrelevance. But there was one detail I hadn't known. Not until much later. It came back to me in a way I didn't expect. Through Brenda. I went back to the hospital for a follow-up appointment around month 5. Same building. Same halls. Same faint antiseptic smell. Different version of me walking through it. Stronger. Steadier. Alive in a way that had nothing to do with survival. I saw her at the nurse's station. She recognized me immediately. "Well, look at you," she said. "Up and walking." Slowly, I smiled. "But yes." We talked for a few minutes. Simple things. Recovery. Work. Progress. Then her expression shifted. Not dramatically. "Just enough. You know," she said, lowering her voice slightly, "I never told you something about that first day." A small familiar tension settled in my chest. "What?" "When he left," she said. "Your boyfriend." "Ex-boyfriend," I corrected gently. She nodded once. "Ex-boyfriend." There was a pause. Then, he stopped at the nurse's station on his way out. I felt my posture straighten slightly. "What did he say?" Brenda's mouth tightened. "He didn't ask about your condition." I waited. "He asked about parking validation." For a second, I thought I had misheard her. "What?" "We validate parking for immediate family visiting critical patients," she said. "Saves about $12 a day." I stared at her. He asked if he could get a pass for the whole week. The room seemed to go very still. "But he wasn't staying," I said slowly. "I know," she said. "And when I told him it was only for days he actually visited." She paused. "Let it sit. You know what he asked next?" I didn't answer. He asked if he could just take the ticket and stamp it himself when he came back so he wouldn't have to pay for the day he picked you up. $12. I felt something inside me settle in a way it hadn't before. Not anger. Not even disbelief. Clarity. Not about what he did. About who he was. It had never just been the trip. Or Olivia. Or the timing. It was the mindset. The instinct. The reflex to calculate. To take. To minimize. To prioritize himself, even in a moment that should have demanded everything from him. $12. While I was lying in a hospital bed with a tube in my chest. "Thank you for telling me," I said quietly. Brenda studied my face for a moment. "You already knew," she said. "Yeah," I nodded. "I just didn't have the final piece." She patted my arm. "You've got a better life now." She wasn't wrong. A few weeks later, I ran into Evan for the first time since the hospital. Hardware store, of all places. I was there picking up materials for a small shed I'd decided to build in the backyard. He was in the paint aisle. With someone. A woman. Not Olivia. Someone new. He looked tired. That was the word. Like life had finally started requiring things from him he didn't know how to give. He saw me. Froze. "Juliet." I nodded. "Evan." The woman beside him glanced between us. "This is," he started. "I know who it is," I said calmly. I didn't stop walking. Didn't slow down. But of course, he followed. "They always do." "You look different," he said. "Physical therapy. I heard you bought a house." "I did." Silence stretched. Then he tried. "You know, if you hadn't overreacted about Cabo, we could have worked it out." I stopped, turned, looked at him fully for the first time. "I was in the ICU," I said, "and you were negotiating over $12 in parking." His face went pale. "How do you—" "Doesn't matter." I held his gaze. "What matters is you showed me exactly who you were, and I finally believed you." He opened his mouth, closed it. Nothing came out. I nodded once, then looked at the woman beside him. "Good luck," I said, and walked away. No anger. No need to prove anything. Just done. That night, Ryan came over. We had been seeing each other for about 2 months. I met him through Mara and Daniel at one of the Sunday cookouts. He was steady, grounded, the kind of man who listened more than he spoke. A physical therapist who ran his own practice. He drove a car that was fully paid off. He never once asked me to cover anything. Not because he was proud, because it simply didn't occur to him that I should. I told him about running into Evan, about what I said, about the parking. Ryan leaned back in the chair, studying me for a moment. You really told him that? Yeah. What did he do? Looked like someone finally handed him a mirror. Ryan smiled slightly. I like that about you. What? You don't ignore reality once you see it. We sat out on the deck as the sun went down. Quiet. Easy. No performance. No tension. Later we cleaned up together. He washed. I dried. Simple. Ordinary. Real. This is nice, he said. What is? All of it. I looked around. The house. The yard. The life. It is, I said. And I meant it. Because 8 months earlier, I had been lying in a hospital bed, watching someone else's version of happiness through a screen, wondering how I had become so easy to leave. Now, I had a home, a career, people who showed up without being asked, and a man who stayed without needing a reason. Some things really are non-refundable. Not the money, not the trip, not even the relationship, but the moment you finally see someone clearly and choose yourself anyway.